Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much for allowing us to be heard on our submission. It's something that we feel very strongly about. I'm just going to go through a brief overview of the submission and then open up for questions. The CAB provides free, confidential and independent information and advice to anyone. The CAB helps people know what their rights are and how to access the services they need. And we use the insights from clients' experiences to show where policies and laws and their implementation are having a negative impact on people. The CAB works for positive social change and a just society, and we're a universal service for everyone. And as an organisation that supports people to know about and understand and access their rights, we acknowledge Te Tiriti as the founding document of our nation and the rights it conferred on Māori as tangata whenua, the Indigenous people of our land, and to tangata tiriti. Our opposition to the bill, and we strongly oppose it, is based on our commitment to an honourable treaty relationship. As set out in our submission, the CAB in Aotearoa has always recognised Te Tiriti or Waitangi as the founding document of our nation, and this is reflected in fundamental documents of our organisation. We recognise Te Tiriti within the constitution of our national organisation and in that of every CAB in Aotearoa. There is acknowledgement and commitment to Te Tiriti as part of the volunteer agreement that every CAB volunteer must sign to be accepted as a volunteer. It's part of our membership principles, and we have a kaupapa, Mauri Manaia, which seeks to honour our tohu, our manaia, and give life to that through promoting te reo and tikanga within the organisation. The key point I want to make from our submission is that we consider it to be unjust and wrong that the bill was developed without the agreement of Māori as signatories and partner to Te Tiriti. We are deeply concerned that the current government, acting as the Crown, one treaty partner, has developed and proceeded with this legislation without the agreement and involvement of the other treaty partner. Given the history of breaches of Te Tiriti by the Crown, we consider that extreme care should be taken to engage meaningfully and in good faith with Māori as treaty partner in regard to anything that has the potential to limit and change their Indigenous rights under the established meaning of Te Tiriti. And hearing from submitters today, it was distressing to hear that some of those hapu and iwi who have gone through the settlement process and received apologies from the Crown for accepted breaches are now questioning the integrity of the apologies made by the Crown. The fact that consultation involvement with Māori as a treaty partner is deeply disappointing, and it means that the Crown is acting as if Te Tiriti doesn't exist and there isn't a treaty partner. We note that the Waitangi Tribunal says of the bill that it would reduce the constitutional status of the Treaty of Te Tiriti, remove its effect in law as currently recognised in treaty clauses, limit Māori rights and Crown obligations, hinder Māori access to justice, impact treaty settlements and undermine social cohesion. A select committee process and a referendum as the means for Māori as a treaty partner to engage with the bill does not recognise and respect their status as a treaty partner. We consider that the government acting as our representative, as the Crown, has not acted in good faith in relation to Māori as the treaty partners of the Crown, and therefore the bill should definitely not proceed. We had hoped that it would not proceed to this stage. As the CAB, we have a vision and work for a decent, fair and just society, and an honourable treaty relationship is fundamental to this. That is the key thing that I would like to emphasise in the submission today, and also to say that as a universal service that has that acknowledgement and commitment to Tiriti, it doesn't take away from our service being available and accessible to everyone. We're a universal service. Kia ora. I'd like to open up to questions.
Kia ora, Kerry, thank you. We've got time for questions. The first one's from Steve Abel.
Kia ora, thank you very much for your very strong submission. I wonder if you can please expand on the point you make in your near final paragraph that in your CitizensAdvice Bureau analysis, Māori face significant barriers to access to justice in relation to knowing and acting on their rights. And these issues exist in the context where an experience of inequity for Māori today is grounded in the ongoing impacts of colonisation, structural racism, and the Crown failing to uphold the rights promised to Māori under Te Tiriti. How do you then respond to the author of this legislation, which says it's correcting a privilege to one group at the expense of another, and that group that currently has privilege in the view of the author is tangata whenua Māori?
I say that that's misguided, and it's also ignoring the evidence that Māori are adversely affected in most of the areas of social experience. We see Māori overrepresented, for instance, and we did an analysis of our client inquiries from Māori, overrepresented in people coming to us because they couldn't put food on the table and needed to access food banks, emergency accommodation, and also in digital exclusion, which is fundamental, often in people being able to access government services is fundamental often to them being able to access their rights. And a number of Māori are they are overrepresented in those people who, for various reasons, cannot operate online or find it difficult.
So would you say that assertion of that privilege is really a highly outrageous one, and that in fact for us to achieve equality in this country, it needs to be done through better enabling that expression of Māori self-determination?
I would say that there needs to be an acknowledgement that there has been harm to Māori from breaches of Te Tiriti to date, and while there is a process of redress, that there is also ongoing harm from those breaches of the treaty, which in many cases removed an economic base from iwi and hapu, and that therefore there has to be particular and special consideration given how to ensure equity for te iwi Māori.
Got it. Thanks, Kerry. We'll go final question from Takata Ferris.
Tēnā koe, Kerry Ngamahi. Hey, given you've got a real broad catchment of people across the country, does your organisation have a feel for how the public are feeling, or what the bill is sort of impacting them, just on a broad sweep?
What I would say is that we are concerned about this feeding into false ideas and false narratives. The one being that Steve Abel just asked about the fact that the acknowledgement of Māori Indigenous rights somehow takes away from other people's rights when it's an and. And as I say in the submission, it is the basis, acknowledging Māori rights under the treaty as tangata whenua is the basis for a decent and just society.
Well, thank you, Kerry. Thanks, folks. That's the end of our time for this afternoon, so I just want to extend our appreciation.
All right. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting presentation. Citizens Advice is one of those kind of institutions that sort of sits there in the background quite a lot, and is always there when sometimes when you need them to provide advice on something. But I think there were some very interesting points made, particularly around that comment around an honourable relationship. I think that's an interesting concept that hasn't really been put forward, and I haven't heard that one being raised before, because it kind of implies that there is a duty particularly on the Crown, to act honourably, whatever that means. But I think that's an interesting concept that should be maybe explored a little bit more. Again, moving forward into the unjust and wrong, it would be unjust and wrong to make any further changes without Māori. We've heard that one come up time and time again. The point around digital exclusion, I think, is a really interesting one, and that will be something that CAB will see coming through their front door, I think, fairly regularly. That's an issue that I know that they have coming to them pretty regularly. So I think that's one that I wasn't terribly surprised to see coming. The point around the referendum, though, I think is really one that hasn't been spoken about an awful lot, and the potentially really harmful and negative impact that a referendum will have on not only race relations, but I think the way that people interact with each other. I think the debate around that could be, if it even gets off the ground, could be really divisive, and it will pull out that kind of that debate that was referred to in the presentation around one group is gaining and another group is having something taken away from them, because I think that will be the narrative that will be driven by those that want to push a referendum through, and I think that's where social cohesion becomes really important. So yeah, I think that's kind of where you look to Australia, where the voice referendum, you look to what happened over there, and it was really quite divisive. So yeah, those are my general thoughts on that.
It's basically this coalition, what they're doing with this bill is pitting inequities against inequities, right? They know that there are people that are Pākehā and that are tauiwi or that are non-Pākehā, but not Māori. They know that there are people that are suffering from lack of economic flexibility and their ability to participate, right? They know that these people are angry, and when they see Māori people getting all of these, what they perceive to be special access to things, or land back, or special rights, or getting money back from the government, a lot of these people they're right to be frustrated that the government is not considering their needs as well. but there's also a level of ignorance. They don't understand that the history behind the inequities that Māori suffer. There is a way to lift both people up, to lift both groups up. And I really don't like the fact that the government is trying to pit inequities against each other as a justification to hoard power.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.